What's up? This is Willpower Astrology, and I am Will, and we are talking about Mars retrograde in Aries. Coming up, this is going to be from September 9th all the way until November 13th. So Mars right now is slowing down. It's like Saturday. Over the next couple days, Mars is going to come to a stop in the sky, and then it's going to start to appear to go backward. The retrograde motion of planets, like Mercury retrograde, happens a couple of times a year. The retrograde motion of planets happens when the planets come into their closer orbits. So like we're just happening to be like come on that inside clip of Mars. It happens about every 2 years. The last couple of times it's happened is summer of 18, spring into summer of 16, spring of 14. So it's a little over a 2 year cycle. But this year we've already had Venus retrograde, and coming up it's going to be Mercury retrograde during this Mars retrograde. So this is like, there's a lot of stuff going on. So what does this mean? So Mars appears to slow down, backs up in the sky from about 28 degrees of Aries to about 14 degrees of Aries. So wherever this is in your chart, that's the area of life that you're going to expect to feel kind of the most impact about this thing going on. So Mars, as a planet, is the traditional masculine. It's the archetypal divine masculine. It's the directive force. It's glyph of like the circle with the arrow coming out of it. The tip of it is the circle represents spirit impulse, and it's coming like we're taking spirit impulse and bringing it through into the physical world, which is the cross, like the point of the arrow, the cross. So as opposed to Venus, where we take the physical world, the cross, and then we elevate it with soul energy. We elevate this physical realm into a higher realm with Venus. With Mars, we're taking the spiritual energy and like giving it a directive physical impulse in the physical realm, right? I'm just going to repeat myself in different ways. It's fine. It's a retrograde, okay? So retrograde planets are closer in orbit. So what happens is like it seems like Mars is going, are the planets go like this, and then it like slows down, and then Mars seems to go like this in the sky, and it's going to go like this again. So it goes over the same area of the sky from 28 to 14, and then back over that. So it goes over that same area of the sky 3 times. So wherever this area of your life is, this Mars energy of directive force, what do I want to do? What do I want to accomplish? How am I going to get there? That gets backed up. That energy is closer. The planet is closer, so it's more personal. It gets like internally. That energy that normally is directed outward kind of goes inward. It's like what's happening. And then wherever this happens in your chart, you're really reevaluating your internal drives in this area of your life, wherever this retrograde is in your chart. So in the sign of Aries, Aries is the domicile or the home of the planet Mars. So Mars is the ruler of the sign of Aries. So Mars is in its home base. So Mars is fiery and it's passionate, and it's like, it's like, I want this. Like, it's not just I want this, it's like, I am. Like, Aries' motto is I am. So it's like, I'm here. I am the shit. I am who I am, what I am. Like whatever is associated with that. Like, but it wherever Aries pops up in your chart, and everybody kind of has Aries somewhere in their chart, this is where you are who you are. It's like, this is me, this is my shit. This is my stuff. And so the big thing kind of about this retrograde is that everything gets taken very personally. It's about, because it's associated with your identity. It's not just like, this is what I want, but it's like, if I don't get what I want, then who even am I? It's this kind of overall identity crisis in the sign of Aries, and it affects the personal self in different ways, as located throughout the chart. So kind of overall themes that I'm kind of seeing for this Mars retrograde period is that conflict kind of rising up from aggression. You know what I mean? Maybe you are having that identity crisis, and you're like, geez, like, oh, and you're feeling frustrated at yourself, and you lash out at somebody else, and then they're like, geez, blah, blah, blah. And then it becomes this, the heightened aggression, and it just keeps going back and forth type of a deal. It could also be that because of this feeling of tied to the identity, that what we want is constantly under scrutiny, and that we're kind of like, we're trying to do this and we're trying to do that, but it's thwarted. You know what I mean? It's this maybe a feeling of helplessness. So like aggression versus helplessness. And then also like things that happen in a general sense or on a world scale being taken very personally as a sense of like personal identity attack. You know what I mean? I see a lot of kind of like, this is who I am, kind of take it or leave it, happening over the next couple of weeks. And, you know, don't be surprised if somebody's like, all right, bye. You know what I mean? Like, see ya, you know, because they're also dealing with their own aggression. They're also dealing with their own feeling of helplessness, like throughout this next several weeks of insanity. So, a couple of things that I just want to talk about with this is, so we have Mars retrograde happening in the sign of Aries. I can't tell which direction it's like Mars retrograde is happening over here. Right now we're in Virgo, but as the sun pulls over here into the sign of Libra, we're going to be this opposition of the sun, which is consciousness, and Mars, you know, in retrograde. Don't ever tell anyone I said that. I have a friend that will roll over and never give me, like, it's not in retrograde, it is retrograde. It's not in retrograde, okay? Get together. The sun is in Libra, pulling against Mars retrograde in Aries, and we get this opposition. So there becomes this tension between what I want and what I feel like is associated with me, and like what you know, who am I, versus like what are the needs of the other people around me, you know. And a lot of times when Libra is involved, like a lot of things like happen while the moon was in Libra, like marriage equality happened on like the one specific day that the moon was in Libra, you know. So there's themes of justice and democracy that are associated with Libra, because it's the sign of the other. It's where we consider not just, you know, all this Aries me, this is who I am, but it's also like, who are you? You know what I mean? And that's why Libra is the scales, because it's about like the balance. There's me and then there's you. And do we balance out? Do we even out? Like, oh, how are we going to balance this thing? So as we pull with the sun pulling into Libra, as Mars retrograde is slowly, you know, just hanging out in Aries for 4 months, on October 14th is the day that opposition comes into exactness. So they're going to be at 21 degrees of sun in Libra and Mars in Aries. And then also that day, Mercury retrograde in Scorpio starts. And Scorpio is also co-ruled by Mars. So there's this incredibly like aggressive, kind of like combative energy. And Aries is more in your face and kind of like up front about it, and Scorpio is more kind of like hidden in the shadows, like kind of plotting, like making plans, and you know, plotting your demise kind of a situation. So like, so there's going to be you know, Mars retrograde in Aries and Mercury retrograde in Scorpio. So then like starting on October 14th at this day, when it's exactly the opposite of the sun in Libra. So like just expect tensions to be kind of mounting until this day of October 14th. And then that leads us to about 2 weeks before the elections. So this is what I also, another zhuzh I want to talk about on this. The election cycle of this thing of Mars retrograde, this is all into it. Like people feeling personally attacked, people feeling thwarted, people feeling like all this type of way about what's happening out in the world. And then Mercury retrograde in Scorpio, secrets coming out, secrets being buried, like what's happening, a big Scorpio transit of Jupiter and Scorpio, Me Too movement, all that type of thing. You know, there's just going to be this huge conflation of energy, and it's just going to be really, really intense. And so whatever you can do to kind of stay zen and stay calm, and like remember that not everything is personal and not everything is a personal attack. And you know what I mean? You don't need to like, you need to pick your battles. You don't need to like fight every battle and all that type of thing. All right. It's just going to be crazy. Mercury retrograde leading up to ending on November 3rd. So this whole election cycle in the US, Mercury retrograde, communication is going to be out of whack. Get your, you know, mail-in ballots and then drop them off early. You don't even need to mail them. You know what I mean? Don't like take the guesswork out of it. You could go drop it off at your place. You know what I mean? And that's it. Like done. Like this election's going to be a mess. Like just get ready for some intense, crazy thing, which I'm sure, you know, is just very self-explanatory and very obvious, but whatever. All right, so here's a really quick breakdown of if this lands in your house of on your chart, kind of how this might affect you personally, kind of the area of your life that this will happen. So if you are If this is happening in your first house, you most likely have Aries rising. And so if this is happening in your first house, then this aggression and all this stuff that I've been talking about at this point, this is in you. This is who you are. So like you might just say something flippant, but somebody takes it with this whole like energy of like, ah, and then they want to come and attack you and, you know, get in a big fight or whatever. Not that I'm talking about personal experience, but you know, so you have this energy within your body. It's coming out of your pores. The first house is the self. So this aggression is going on within you. You know what I mean? If you're going to lash out, make sure you're doing it for the right reasons at the right time for the right people. You know what I mean? You're going to feel personally thwarted. Like, I would like to do this, I would like to do that, but you can't do this, you can't do that, right? Yeah. If this is in your first house, like all this stuff I've said deals with like you personally times 10, you know? And also like maybe you need to stop thinking about yourself so much. If this is all happening in your first house, maybe like what would help you is like thinking about other people a little bit. So if you have this in your second house going on, most likely you have Pisces rising. So if this is in your second house of values and possessions, you're kind of reevaluating what you have, like all this stuff that you have or stuff that you don't have or that you want or whatever. Like, is it really you? You know what I mean? You go through this like, do I like this? Have I just been holding on to it? Is it, you know, it's not me. Bam. Like it could be this whole kind of purge, reevaluation of like your literal space. This is my stuff. I don't like that. That type of thing. Or like, but basically it's about what am I getting out of this? You know what I mean? What use is this to me? Have I seen this in 3 years? Is this bringing me value? Is this bringing, you know, because of this is values and possessions, it might also be a self-esteem moment. It might also be like reevaluating, like, how do I feel about myself? Like, what do I want to do for myself? You know what I mean? Maybe I don't prioritize myself enough. And like, what do I have? What's mine? Like my self-esteem, my value, my possessions. It could be this, you know, reevaluating what you want in terms of like your goals in that regard, you know? Could also be reevaluating your own money, your own finances, some kind of situation that way. If you have this in your third house, you most likely have Aquarius rising. And I feel like you're going to be reasserting yourself when it comes to communicating with others. You might have to like really like, say, this is what I want, you know, and like really say your piece, because the third house of communication is, you know, related to Gemini things of talking it out and hearing other viewpoints and kind of like getting an understanding, getting at the truth. So if this is happening in your third house, it could be like, I don't really know how to say what I want. I don't really know how to get across the message of what I want. I don't know if that's what I really want or if that's just what it's this whole thing about communicating. So if you have this in your fourth house, it could also be a thing with siblings. Maybe you don't get in a fight with your siblings in the third house. Maybe you don't get in a fight with your siblings, because this is also the house that is ruled by, is like your early life, your siblings, your kind of like your early learning, you know, stuff that you just kind of like know inherently growing up, that type of thing. Fourth house, if you have this happening in your fourth house, you most likely have Capricorn rising. So you might feel a little bit, if this happening in your fourth house is deeply personal to you, you might feel like an inner fire is a little bit extinguished. You might feel like your engines are run down, can't find motivation, you know, like kind of reevaluating, like, what is my sense of purpose? There's a listlessness that I think comes with this, this placement of the fourth house. Like, it's all this stuff about taking it personal. It's not just about like me and my body, but it's about like my soul. It's about like the deep root of who I am. It's, you know, the mask that I wear that I don't show the world at all. And kind of reevaluating, what do I want from myself? What do I want from, like, you know, fourth house is also the home. Maybe you're going to buy a house or change your residence, or, you know, maybe you're like, I need to, you know, redecorate or, you know, re-zhuzh up something, and, you know, get into it, because it's your house. It's your space where you need to feel secure and like feel, you know, feel like you are you. So maybe you're reevaluating, who am I? Literally, like, I don't know who I am to myself. But kind of heavy in the emotions. Mars does not like to be in the fourth house, because Mars is all about like, I want to go, I want this, I want that. And the fourth house is all about kind of like deeply emotional personal stuff. It's the house of origins. So like you might be coming back to, because this is all kind of, you know, Chiron is in Aries. This is all kind of happening in your fourth house. You might be coming back to like a sense of like your roots, or, you know, kind of reevaluating your childhood in some way, like that type of thing. But it's like deeply personal, deeply emotional. And you might feel like, you know, like waterlogged. If you have this in the fifth house, you most likely have Sagittarius rising. And basically the question of this is, am I having fun yet? You're going to feel stifled. You're going to feel like you're in a rut. You're going to feel like everything you try to do just is like boring and routine and just bleh. And you're just going to feel like that sparkle that you usually want to feel is just not there. Basically what I say, if you have this happening in your fifth house, is spend time with what brings you joy. You know what I mean? Maybe you've spent too much time doing considerations for other people, or even like feeling guilty about spending time about things that you find personally enjoyable, because it's like there's so much crazy shit going on in the world that you don't know how to like just relax. You know what I mean? But maybe that's kind of the thing too, is like what sparks your creativity, what sparks your sense of playfulness and your need to, or like your desire to create, you know? It's just gonna feel like a trudge. I feel, you know, the next couple of months is like, it's just gonna be madness in the world. It's just gonna be like, this is no fun. Are we having fun yet? You know, so spend time with the things that bring you joy. Nurture your own joy if you have this happening in your fifth house. If you have this happening in the sixth house, you most likely have Scorpio rising. So if you've had this happening in your sixth house, this is your house of health and habits. So you might have some kind of health crisis. There might be some kind of breakdown, or, you know, I like knock on wood, you know, but like maybe it's like, you know, like a broken bone, or, you know, like a hospital visit, you know, it's like something that appendicitis. Like I'm not trying to like send out the bad juju, but it's about the body. It's about like the physical organs of the body and how those work, and also about how you work and your processes and what you do. So if you have this happening in the sixth house, you might be really working a lot. You might be starting a new job. You might be like having clients demand your time, or you might have other considerations where you feel like you have to just go, 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 go. What would help you is being very organized and strategic about how you're doing what you're doing, because you might run out of energy if this is all going on in your sixth house. Your health might get run down, because if you get frazzled, your body's going to get run down, and it's like you have this connection to your body and your work. So you want to go, go, go. You want to like make this happen, but if you go too much, you're going to burn out and you're going to like run yourself down, and that's where the kind of risk of these health things comes in. So it comes to how you're spending your time, how you're utilizing that, and how you are taking care of yourself in the very literal sense of like drink enough water, eat the right food, that type of thing. In particular, you people with the sixth house, Mars retrograde in Aries. This is going on forever. Let's see if this uploads to YouTube. If you have this in the seventh house, you most likely have Libra rising. So if you have Libra rising and you have this happening in your seventh house, you most likely feel constantly aggressed by other people. You're like, I'm just trying to help, and people are like, you know what I mean? Like it could be this whole moment of like, you're like trying to be peaceful and people are raging. You know, like people bring this to your table and they're like dumping this on your scale and telling you to even it out. And you're like, I don't want to. I just want peace. You know, like Venus ruled Libra just wants peace in the seventh house of relationships with other people. So if you have Mars retrograde happening in your seventh house, Mars also does not like to be in the seventh house, because that's where we have to consider others. Mars doesn't care what you want. Mars wants what I want. You know, I want what I want, and I don't care what you want. And so Mars does not like to be in the seventh house. So this could be really disruptive for your relationships. And like, it might be that like people are lashing out. It might be that you lash out. It could be, but it's this disruptive moment of like the scales are tipped and now we have to find this new equilibrium with others, with all this stuff that has been talked about before now. You know, people are mirrors, you know, like if you're experiencing that, is it you? Is it that? With people in the first house, it's definitely them. With people in the seventh house, maybe like people are mirroring what you're giving them, type of them, you know, like it's this whole thing. So if you have this happening in your 8th house, you most likely have Virgo rising. So if this is happening in your 8th house, this could be a big time of transformation and change for you. Completely reevaluating what you want, completely reevaluating who you are. You know what I mean? Like you could just change everything. Change everything. I've been trying to come up with examples, but I don't want to be like flippant. Change your house, change your life, change your, partner. I see a lot of breakups for people with this happening in the 8th house, because it's this like, I don't know if I want this bond. I don't know if I want this 8th house shared thing. Whereas in the 2nd house, it's about what I value. In the 8th house, it's about what we share and what we value. So maybe that changes because maybe I don't want to share this with you anymore. Or maybe, that deepens and now I know who I am better because I deepened my bond with you. But it's this thing about reevaluating my drives through this deep bond with another person, right? Maybe we didn't know what our drives were until we had this deep soul merge with this other person. But anyways, like there's also like, potentially letting go of things, letting go of people, just like I was talking about the 2nd house of like reevaluating possessions. It could be like, you don't serve my life goals anymore, bye. Like drop it, just dropped, that type of thing, like letting go, rebirth, leaning into the changes, kind of setting a fire to the bridge and kind of watching your, connection disappear to the land or whatever, like whatever metaphor you want to use. It's a scary thing, so get into it. If you have this in the 9th house, you most likely have this happening. If you have this in the 9th house happening, you most likely have Leo as your rising sign. And this is all about your beliefs and the way that you kind of like your philosophy and like your connection to like higher ideals and higher learning and a bigger viewpoint of the world. You could find yourself confronted with maybe things that you held to be deep truths or have to be reevaluated. Things that you thought were this like transcendent thing, now you're seeing in a new way, and now you were like, oh, like now who am I now that my beliefs and my viewpoints have been challenged in such a manner like this? What maybe you come across some new dogma or some new ideal. I'm just reading notes out of my book here. That is, or maybe you lose your ideals. Maybe you have this like disconnect. It's like to become disillusioned with everything you thought you held dear. I live in Utah, so I'm used to that because it's some bullshit around here. But if you have this going on here, it's your horizons are expanded for good or for ill. You know what I mean? You see a bigger slice of the world and you realize that maybe you didn't know as much as you thought you did before, or you didn't see as much of the big picture as you thought you did before. It's this type of thing about like really reevaluating and really like reevaluating, like, because the 9th house connection to foreign borders, like seeing yourself as differently as a citizen of the world, or like as a citizen of whatever citizen you are, So if you have this happening in the 10th house, you probably have Cancer as your rising sign. And this is basically the way you see yourself as a part of the world changing. So whereas it's like instead of your viewpoints and philosophy, this is like seeing yourself as a member of the world stage. Like what role do you play? Like this is who I am personally. And when I go outside, I put on my suit and tie and I go out there and I'm this part of the community. This is who I am publicly. This is who I am on Facebook. This is who I am, on Twitter or whatever, who am I to the world and what is my value in that way? Like, what is my reputation? What is my community standing? All that type of like 10th house is like the career, the long-term goals, like all this type of thing. So if you have this happening in your 10th house, you might be making career moves, like not just like a new job starting, but like completely changing lanes of a career, or completely reevaluating, like I want to take this skill set from this career and I want to now apply it to this goal that I have. I want to get this raise so that now I can have a better house. I don't know what, you know what I mean? Like it's this, you're making money moves. It's this like it's about life and legacy and kind of long-term stuff. It's about high stakes and life choices and kind of this like life trajectory moment. What am I building out of my life? So if you have this happening in your 10th house, you're really like reevaluating like kind of what are your long-term goals and like what what legacy are you building for yourself in the world out there, and what kind of name are you going to leave for yourself, you know? So if you have this happening in the 11th house, you most likely have Gemini rising. And basically the way you see yourself and as a part of a community changes. Aries rising, deeply personal in the 11th house of Aquarius. You might not see yourself as a part of the same social group that you did before, or you might get a whole new social group. You might make some new friends. You know what I mean? There's all this stuff we're not able, you know, it's still quarantine. I've been in quarantine since March. You know what I mean? Like maybe we're not seeing people as much anymore. But the way that you see yourself as a part of the group changes. Your connection to your friends changes. It might seem like everything's kind of off with the people around you. It might seem like you're isolated. Duh. You know what I mean? But in particular, kind of your hopes and dreams, like your ambitions, because of that 11th house Aquarius connection to kind of these like metaphysical visions of the future and kind of creating the reality that you want to see type thing. You're like, oh, I never had this idea before, but now I want to go do this thing. Oh, I never thought about, I always thought I wanted to be a rock star, but now I know I want to go be a social worker. So now I'm going to go to school. Great. You know what I mean? Like, it's that type of like, what are your aspirations and what are you really hoping to get out of like the fruit of your life? You know what I mean? And what does that mean to you? You know what I mean? And like the meaningfulness of your relationships on a grand scale, through your networks, through your friends, you know, the sense of connectivity through community, really kind of feeling yourself in a different way because of that. And then so this is actually this next one. If you have the 12th house, this is happening in your 12th house, you most likely have Taurus rising. And this is actually several of my friends and family. As I was looking up charts, I was like, oh, this is several people that I know. So please listen. The 12th house is the house of, you know, subconsciousness. It's the house of, they call it the house of hidden horrors. Basically stuff comes up, it comes out of the woodwork. It comes up out of the subconscious. It comes up, you know, just overwhelmingly. You get like lost in it. You become adrift. You lose your identity. You kind of have this breakdown kind of almost of who am I and was that mean and all this kind of thing. Because whatever you don't serve will cause you suffering. So you're like, I want to do this stuff. This is who I am. And the more it seems like you try to do what you want, the more that like, you know, well, I just want to go to the grocery store and pick up some milk. And so I go get in my car and then it's a blowout and then I get a ticket for being on the side of the road. And it's like just, it seems to be this tumbling thing of these things that seem to be out of your control. So a lot of it comes down for you in the 12th house people to like, how are you going to react? You know what I mean? Because if you freak out, if you're like, I'm just trying to think of something. Like if my phone is freaking out and I like, and I throw my phone and break it against the wall. Now I don't have a phone at all instead of just a phone that is slow. You know what I mean? So like you're going to cause yourself even more suffering if you don't like really serve what is coming up in the moment. Like, why do I feel this way? Why is this happening? Like, if you respond with despair and kind of like lashing out in this very Aries Mars retrograde way, it's going to cause you to suffer more. You know what I mean? It's very like just head trippy and messy, and you know what I mean? So just stay calm, stay focused, especially you people in the 12th house going on with this, because I think in particular, like you might be susceptible to like accidents or you know, just problems because of being careless or being frustrated or angry. So you have to really kind of like keep a level head, even though stuff seems incredibly overwhelming. So this is a half-hour video. Hopefully it'll upload. If it doesn't, maybe I can try to break it down into some little splices. But that is your Mars retrograde in Aries from September 9th to November 13th. Get into it, okay? Stay safe out there. Take care of each other. And vote. Everybody go out and vote. Blammo. Get it, okay? vote, vote.